Good morning. This morning, I would like to share with you the story of how I came to God. Now, I came to God in the broadest sense of the word when my parents joined Saugatuck Church when I was 5 years old. However, I felt truly called to God a few years later in my life. Sorry, a little out of breath. For the sake of clarity, what I mean by feeling truly called to God is the acknowledgement of his existence and the belief that he is omnipresent and all-knowing and all-loving. My grandmother was Catholic, not extremely religious, but she believed in God and had rosary beads. She passed away when I was 9, and at her funeral they handed out prayer cards with a Hail Mary on them. So I decided to memorize it. I had no true rhyme or reason at the time. I thought knowing it might bring me closer to her or be a useful prayer to know and have. Since her funeral service, I had said that specific prayer every night before bed. Now I had a few more lines of my own, but I find it to be an all-encompassing prayer that I feel good about saying. One line goes, "Pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death." It reminds me that God continues to forgive us and doesn't give up on us. He doesn't give up on anyone. The first line is, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee." While grammatically the thee refers to the Hail Mary, I feel as though I am encompassed in the thee, making the meaning, the Lord is with me. This is a sentiment I have carried around with me. God is always there, in good times and bad. So this simple prayer card is what sparked my calling to God. It consciously or unconsciously made me feel closer to God and made me want to pursue my faith. And now I stand before you, 9 years later, still believing in the same God and still saying the same prayer.
Picture a 6 or 7-year-old version of me. Take a look at your bulletins, I'll be right there. Sitting in the back of the sanctuary, dressed in an old, scratchy potato sack, refusing to take part in story time. I was mad at everyone. My parents for making me do this stupid play, my sister for making fun of my costume, and the adult who was responsible for putting me in this awful, itchy situation. That adult, of course, was Michael Hendricks. I went through story tent after story tent, playing all sorts of small roles that made the congregation burst out in a collective "aww" at the sight of us cute little kids in different costumes. But I never really wanted to take part in it. However, this all changed once I reached middle school, and more importantly, once I learned about the real Michael. He wasn't just an evil guy who wanted to cast young kids in parts they didn't want and force them to go on stage and do things that they didn't want to do. He is a man that the youth group and I have come to love. Traditionally, in story tent, the main parts went to middle schoolers. So once I reached this age, I was excited to finally be the star of the show. I went through 3 plays, always with pretty big roles, and once 8th grade ended, I was ready to retire from my acting career. However, Michael was able to lure me back into story tent for not 1, not 2, but 3 more years. I remember having a conversation with my mom about it last year. She told me that Michael wanted me to play a small role in story tent, and he'd be totally fine if I didn't want to be seen on stage with a bunch of middle schoolers as a junior in high school. However, I responded with, "After all he's done for me, it's the least I could do." This couldn't be a more true statement. There have been a handful of people in this church that have had a lot of influence on my life, but there probably isn't one person who has done more for me than Michael. Not that it's a competition. Michael has been a mentor for me and many others in this group through story tent, confirmation, class, and youth group. He is the one person in this entire church that I can point to and say, "Help me realize my faith in God." He is the man that made church mean more to me than just free fruit at coffee hour, which was a difficult task. Just ask my parents. There are so many stories I could tell about Michael, but I'll save those for when I come back from graduating from college. In the meantime, I just want to thank this Mets fan, rock star, Steve Jobs lookalike, Michael Hendricks. Someone who I know will always have a part in story time for me.
Morning. I started coming to this church in 5th grade, and I wasn't very involved. I basically came in, sat in a pew, doodled on some name cards until Pastor Danner's puppet show, and went down in coffee hour and took a few desserts. But the older I got more and more involved in things like story tent and confirmation, youth group, and I went on mission trips. And amazing people like Michael Hendricks, Dana Johnson, and Kim Mathias have influenced me a lot and brought me on this path. I also have been heavily influenced by people in this youth group because I've never been a part of such an amazing group. There's never a dull moment with these guys, and I always know they have my back. This year, a friend of mine took his life, and it was very hard on me. But we came together and we talked about it, and it helped me a lot. So I know God called me to be part of this church, to meet the amazing people, and to bring me on a path that I will follow the rest of my life, to bring service to God. Thank you.
Hi, church. My name is Nicole Mathias. The first time I knew God had called me to Saugatuck was when I was 13. I had gone to this church long before then, so I knew why I went to church. Thanks, Mom. But it wasn't until 8th grade that I came to the realization of why this church. 8th grade was a big year for this class. It was the year of the fire, the year we moved the year we were welcomed by and moved to Temple Israel, and the year we were confirmed. However, at the beginning of that year, 2 girls in our grade passed away. One of them happened to be my best friend, Kate. My mom and Michael decided to have a sort of memorial service for the girls with just the youth group, with the support from Craig Gillespie, Doug Johnston, and Howie Toback, who was our interim pastor at the time. We sat in a circle at the front of the church and put candles in the middle. We wrote down questions on index cards and put them in a pile. At first, only the adults were talking, and then Mr. Gillespie asked a question and invited the kids to respond and opened the floodgates. Everyone began to share. Together, we asked and answered questions about life, grief, and the future. As I sat crying, I felt arms around my shoulders, people taking my hand. And that's when I knew that God had called me to this church to have this loving community around me when I needed it, and to allow me to be a source of support when these kids needed me back.
Hello. All right, I want everyone to raise your hand if you've ever been new to something. Okay, so like everyone, right? Whether it be a job, a school, a club, a team, a family, anything. Okay, so everyone that had their hands up knows to understand that yes, being new to something can be a struggle. But if you're with the right people, it can be a breeze. I grew up a Catholic and I attended St. Luke's Church since as long as I can remember. When I started attending their youth group events before 9th grade, I was really interested in the activities that were stored in our future, but there was something that was missing. I felt no connections into the group. I felt alone, and frankly, I was not all right with that. I went to some of the meetings throughout the year, but I didn't have as much of a motivation as I desired. One of my good friends was going on a mission trip with her youth group from Saugatuck Congregational in the following June, and I was invited because they had a bunch of available spaces. I was nervous as heck to be joining this new group that has been together for a multitude of years, and they all knew each other extremely well, and I knew about like 2 or 3 of them barely, so I sucked it up and I wished for the best as I approached my journey. Let me tell you that I am dead serious when I say that I have never met a more accepting, benevolent, overall humble group of kids. Right away, I felt very welcome for everyone, chaperones and kids. They went out of their way to make sure I was comfortable and felt like I was contributing equally among everyone else. My relationship with everyone has only grown over the years, and I can comfortably call these kids my close friends. I am no longer the new kid, but it's astonishing to see additions over the years to the youth group being treated exactly like me, making this entire youth group strong and healthy. Being a part of this group brought me many great relationships, taught me how to be gracious and put others before myself, and it helped guide me to my realization of the occupation I want to uphold. One of the things that scares me about living the rest of my life is that I'm going to have to deal with being the new kid all over again. I'm scared of not being able to find people who accept me as who I am and disrupt me from being the real me. No matter where I go, I'm going to have to deal with people who don't like me, like everyone. People who get in my way, people who judge me, and people who won't simply understand my character. And there's no way I can avoid that. But I've learned that I need to surround myself with people that help me maintain a healthy mindset and encourage me when I need it the most. My God moment was joining a youth group that helped me find that little something that was missing. Becoming a part of the youth group can bring you to building friendships, helping others, and finding yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Liam Borner. Ever since I moved to Westport, Connecticut almost 14 years ago, Saugatuck Congregational Church has been there for me. I started attending Sunday school as a kindergartner with a kindergartner's understanding of God. Over those years, the people of this church have really shown me what it means to be a Christian. One of these people is Kim Mathias. My Sunday school teacher for most years has been like a second mother to me, encouraging me in faith and acting as a model of God's love for me. I owe this church and everyone in it for guiding me on my journey and getting me where I am today. I would like to thank all of the loving, caring, and faithful people that have been a part of my life at this church over many years.
Sorry, mine's on my cell phone. Hey, hello. So I don't remember it very much, but my mom sometimes tells me the story of my little sister's christening. While both Daniel and I had been baptized here, we didn't attend church regularly at all. But after Charlotte's baptism ended and we were leaving, I asked my mom if we could come back here next week. Almost 15 years later, here I am. I don't really remember why I asked to come back to church as a 3-year-old. I probably liked dressing up, considering Charlotte and I attended church in a variety of Cinderella-inspired dresses for the next 5 years. But I know now, if I was asked why I stayed here, why I went through confirmation and went on mission trips in the summer, and why I come to youth group every Wednesday, it's because the people who are here are some of the best people I've ever met. For those of you who don't know me, I'm not the most religious person out there. Whenever I tell my friends from school that I can't hang out Wednesday nights because I have church youth group, they look at me like they're saying, "Really? You?" And when they learn I help out in the Sunday school, they'll sometimes laugh. But there's something here that Michael and Dana do during youth group, while we're praying on Wednesday night or thinking about the daily questions on the mission trip. They always ask us to think about God, or we can think about love. So thank you to Kim and Michael and to everyone else here. Oh, and Dana, accidentally did your name. So thank you to Kim and Michael and Dana and everybody else here, because if I named everyone, I would be here for hours. Because I'm still not sure if I believe in God or any kind of higher power. But I know I believe in love, and I know you can find love here. Thank you.
Hi, for all of you who don't know me, I'm the kid from Boston, Mark Fairchild. So I have to ask, I have to answer, why was I called to the Saugatuck Youth Group? I live 156 miles away, so why am I here today? And I think 2 years ago, I think God wanted me, for some reason unknown to me, to learn how to braid hair. And where else better to learn such a skill than a small church in the middle of the Badlands of Navajo Nation with 6 girls whom I have only known for about 5 days. Of course, you all may remember the story of Jesse teaching me the basics only to tap in Sophie a few moments later out of frustration for my incompetence to learn such a simple technique. All while the boys talked about basketball and Drew and Brett moved my sleeping bag to the girls' side of the room. But what really happened during this braid train we formed was a transformation in my relationship with the members of the youth group. I went from knowing these kids for a few days to feeling like I had known them for my whole entire life. And it's really no surprise, however, that such a social transformation took place while braiding Nicole's hair. For centuries, it has been the act of braiding hair that has brought so many villages, tribes, and communities together, whether by socializing in the midst of the process or teaching the techniques to younger children. In fact, the Navajos spend countless hours on each other's hair, from brushing it with a stiff grass called bizo, to then braiding it into a bun called a siya. During the leisure times, family members and friends are able to bond closer together through the simple act of braiding hair. And so, in a way, one could say that it is somewhat ironic that I learned to braid hair from the youth group in Navajo Nation, as we were able to take a break from our busy day and grow closer together, as I was taught what we call the 3-strand braid. So why God called me to the Saugatuck Youth Group, I believe, was so that I could develop friendships I could not see my life without today. And why He also called me to learn how to braid hair, well, perhaps it could be so I'd impress some girls in college, or because I'll have a daughter one day. But most likely it was that He knew that such a simple lesson would forever connect me with these lifelong friends. Thank you.
No, I'm not a graduating senior, but Emma Bravo couldn't be here. You normally see her sitting over there with Mark Mathias filming, and so she wrote this. So sorry I can't make it to the service Sunday. I signed up to face paint at an event for kids with disabilities, and it directly conflicts. I wrote a little paragraph for you, but it doesn't even come close to summing up how thankful I am for you and for all of the amazing people at church and the support you have all given me for so many years. I've been through a lot in my time coming to church, and I haven't been able to come as consistently as some of the other youths. But the people here have always made me feel like I'm a part of the Saugatuck family. Even this year, when I've barely been able to come, everyone continued inviting me to the youth activities, and I always knew there was a place for me. The congregation has supported me and my interests by letting me play bass or film during services, helping me get involved in story tent, and by giving me Mary Ellen Hendricks as a mentor during my confirmation. In addition to all of their support, Kim, Michael, and Mary Ellen have been extremely important role models for me, and I know they've helped shape all of the other kids here as well. As many of us graduate and move to the next chapter of our lives, we will all take the acceptance and kindness that we have learned from them with us. Love, Emma.
I came to Westport 4 years ago, and as anyone who moves into a new place, I felt nervous about finding an accepting and welcoming group of people. Coming to this church was a miracle. I had conversations with and started to make connections with the most welcoming group of people I have ever met. I was particularly struck by the cohesion within the youth group. Coming to the youth group on the Wednesdays that I did come allowed me to express my thoughts about God and share laughs with people in a time that was so critical for me to have a support group. So I'd like to extend a thank you to the church and a big thank you to the youth group. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thank you to Kim and Michael for having a special confirmation process for me.
I'm about to get technological. So, I was asked by the leaders of our youth group the same question that Mark was talking about. Why did God call for me to be part of this youth group? It's a loaded question without a doubt, and trying to pinpoint one specific motive of the Lord is a daunting task. Of course, as I stand in front of you all, I want to tell you about the unparalleled camaraderie that I've experienced with the members of this youth group, or the opportunities I have been given on all of our mission trips to see love in action. But that's not why I was called to this youth group. As I look back on my time in this group, I see a symbol which truly represents why God called me to this trip to Cuba and to free pizza every Wednesday. That symbol is home. Before I moved to Westport, I lived in Wilton throughout a good portion of my adolescence. In one town, I lived in 3 different houses, and with all that moving and packing, it can be tough on a kid to develop the idea of a definitive home. 3 houses later became one in a totally new world when I moved to Westport. I got to experience the social hierarchy for the first time in 5th grade, and leaving behind friends and knowing no one made it a little tough to call Westport home for the short period of time I had been there. Then I heard through the grapevine that it would be fun if I went to the Saugatuck Heifer farm trip. And I don't know who remembers Heifer, but basically the main event is that you get to go and try out different houses of a different country on a smaller scale. And looking back on the trip, I was taught a lot. I was shown what a house was really like.
I was really shown what a home was, more particularly one that I'd probably never experience again. And I find it more than uncanny that one of my first experiences was with this youth group. It seems to show really well what I was meant to do with this group, and that was to make it my home.
Hi, I'm Hannah. Another one of the questions we were asked before we came here was, where have you seen God in large and small ways at Saugatuck? I had a really hard time separating where I've seen God in big and small ways in Saugatuck, because to me, the mark each ultimately leaves is one and the same. This fall, I spoke on our mission trip service about one night we spent kayaking on a kayaking tour in Casco Bay. I spoke about how at the end of the tour, after Sophie and I overcame our extreme struggle to catch up with the rest of the group, we got towed. We all fit our kayaks together in a clump that resembled a massive puzzle. I remember thinking that if there was ever a way to describe our youth group in one visual, this was it. A puzzle whose picture only grows more magnificent as new pieces, the new members, are added. This metaphor describes what I think our youth group and our entire church is all about. We are people who knows that there is always room for another seat at the table. It was a small moment, a split-second, literal snapshot of a God moment which encapsulates the life of this faith community. We are a church which thrives on togetherness. We lift each other up in our moments of need, as we stood together on the front lawn that night after the fire, knowing we had to adapt as a church without walls. We were there for each other's moments of happiness as well, at each other's plays, recitals, and sporting events. We are together through the simple discussions, deep, open, meaningful, trust-filled conversations facilitated by our godsends, our youth leaders who have built the foundation which has allowed us to create what I so deeply hope is a lifelong bond, a bond which, regardless, I will forever be grateful for. God and love are overflowing here. Whether it be in large or small moments, each gives additional confirmation that love, hope, faith, peace, God can be everywhere for everyone.